for honest American citizens who work hard and play by the rules. That is why I came here in the first place.
But that's not why President Trump chose Rod Rosenstein to be his deputy attorney general. As the president has publicly made clear many times, he wanted an attorney general and a deputy attorney general who would protect him. What you just heard was from a speech that Rod Rosenstein gave in Washington today that might be the last public words that we hear from Rod Rosenstein as Deputy Attorney General, since he could be leaving that job any day now. He told his audience today that this would be one of his final speeches as Deputy Attorney General, and he seemed to be aiming much of the speech directly at the President of the United States. Guess who went to the same college as Donald Trump? Rod Rosenstein. He's a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School, and he told his audience today how important that has been to his work as a prosecutor.
I attended an undergraduate business school where I studied management, marketing, accounting, and finance. Understanding business remains central to my work. Financial expertise is important to prosecutors because you need to comprehend transactions in order to understand when they're fraudulent.
So when Rod Rosenstein looks at checks that were used in a criminal payoff scheme, for example, you're not going to fool him about what's going on here because you have changed which checking account you're using in the middle of the payoff plan. Who do you think was paying more attention at the Wharton School to legal accounting practices? Rod Rosenstein or Donald Trump?
We should focus on the people who play significant roles in setting a company on a course of conduct. We want to know who devised and authorized the schemes, and we want to hold them accountable.
Last fall, I pled guilty in federal court to felonies for the benefit of, at the direction of, and in coordination with individual number one. And for the record, individual number one is President Donald J. Trump.
The most effective deterrent to corporate wrongdoing is to identify the people who commit crimes and to send them to prison.
Rod Rosenstein supervised the federal prosecution of Michael Cohen in New York City, in which the prosecutors, supervised by Rod Rosenstein, said that Donald Trump directed Michael Cohen to commit those crimes and committed those crimes with Michael Cohen. Rod Rosenstein just said, if you do that, you should be sent to prison. And here is how Rod Rosenstein ended what may be his final speech as Deputy Attorney General.
I want to leave you with the wisdom of an ancient proverb. If you desire to know a person's character, consider his friends.
Paul Manafort, chairman of the Trump presidential campaign, found guilty and sentenced to 47 months in federal prison and awaiting sentencing in another federal case where he pleaded guilty. Rick Gates, deputy chairman of the Trump presidential campaign, pleaded guilty, testified against Paul Manafort, and is awaiting sentencing. Michael Flynn, Trump campaign advisor and the first Trump White House national security advisor, pleaded guilty, awaiting sentencing. George Papadopoulos, Trump campaign advisor, pleaded guilty. Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's personal lawyer, pleaded guilty, sentenced to 3 years, and awaiting sentencing in another case where he has pleaded guilty. Roger Stone, Trump political advisor, indicted and awaiting trial.
Always make sure that you can stand proudly with the company that you keep. Thank you very much.
The Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Rod Rosenstein, gets tonight's last word. Always make sure that you can stand proudly with the company you keep. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.